Hello, everybody, and welcome to 3-Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Samantha Cotterill.
I'm Lee White.
And I'm Will Terry. And all three of us are professional illustrators. We've all worked for all the major publishers in the business. Together, we publish somewhere around 75 children's books, and we've all taught illustration at university art programs.
That is correct. Each week we come at you guys with different illustrator interviews or fantastic listener questions, like maybe something that you have wondered. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we argue, but each time you learn something brand spanking new.
All right, we did it. Wow.
First take, too. First take.
Episode done. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today.
Remember that time when it took us like 8 takes, Lee?
That was last week, Will.
It's because you need to bring the Hotmail technology in to make things run smoothly. So you're welcome.
We found out that Sam has a Hotmail account.
It's a badge of honor.
How long have you had that for real?
Since they started Hotmail.
Since the beginning of the interweb.
Do you access it through AOL?
Now this is too technology for me. All I know is when I go to my rheumatologist, they completely understand why I'm there when they see I have a Hotmail account. That and my love of lawns. So.
Hey, so where's Jake today?
Jake?
Yeah.
Oh, he's in Antarctica.
Jake? Who's
you
Jake?
didn't hear?
He's done.
So Jake is busy trying to get his graphic novel. I won't say done, but he's trying to like put miles on that puppy.
I didn't know why he was bailing today. So he's trying to just get some work done. I don't understand that concept.
As we speak, like imagine this right now. His head is down, he's hunched over, and he is just jamming, knowing that he doesn't have to podcast today.
Since you started that sentence, he's already finished a page.
Probably.
That's how fast Jake is. He is seriously one of the fastest illustrators I've ever seen. And I'm pretty fast, but he leaves me in the dust.
And he's not hard. What's that?
I said he cranks hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's not self-conscious. That's my big thing that I'm jealous of Jake for, is he can draw in front of people and correct. So like I have this fear that I won't be able to correct it and bring it back, like it's nosing in, and Jake just knows that he's going to pull out of that.
I'm surprised that you have that, and I'm also surprised that Jake doesn't have that fear, because typically, at least for me, in my case, I got over that fear when I was a teacher, because I just drew. I had teachers in college that never drew for anybody, and I said, when I got hired, I will never do a class where I can't demonstrate, at least attempt to demonstrate what I'm talking about.
It's weird, but I have a negative feedback loop that says they're watching my brain in real time, and this is scary. And then that negative feedback loop just kind of corkscrews the whole plane right on down into the ground.
Yeah,
I'm way better at it now.
Can you draw in front of people, Sam?
No, I can't. I wish I could, and I always see like, oh, go out and draw things. I'm too self-conscious.
Fist bump, Sam. Thank you.
I can't do it and I always say, like, my mom is part of a studio where how like the membership where you've got your studio space and then the public people are allowed to come through. I wouldn't be able to do it because I'd be too aware that there's going to be people looking over my shoulder and
judging.
And then I even tried going to the coffee shop last week, and I even put a wall of books around me, and I still like what if somebody super tall comes in and looks over my wall and sees what I'm doing? I couldn't do it.
Okay. I'm going to give you guys a confession, because this is the appropriate time. I've been waiting to do this for a long time. When we had draw lunches, the only time I would ever draw is if I got my drawing started in a really good direction first, and then I would just come in with work in progress, like, oh, I've been drawing this.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I think I'd be the same way.
I tell you, I'm so stupid. The problem is I'm too dumb to realize that I suck sometimes, and so I just go in with reckless abandon. Like when I first started drawing and painting, I had been drawing and painting for probably 3 or 4 months maybe, and I started painting live at a restaurant in Los Angeles. So
Oh,
while people are waiting to go to their table, I'm set up there and I'm painting on these big canvases. No idea what I'm doing. Never taken a painting class before or a drawing class at that point. And I'm painting huge, no sketch,
Was this a
just,
gig?
huh?
Was this a gig? Like
Yeah,
you were
yeah.
being
I
paid
did
to
it
do
for
this?
probably 6 months. I did it once a week, and they'd pay me in food.
How did you get?
wow.
How did you get that?
We had eaten there, and I saw somebody else doing it, and it was kind of their thing. Like they had an artist station, and they had typically 2 or 3 artists working at once because it was a pretty big restaurant in LA, and I was like, oh, I should do this. Not even thinking like that is not the thought I should have had. I did no idea what I was doing, but I should do this, and then I did it for like 6 months, for better or for worse. Um, I had my first client from that and actually got stiffed on my first job from that as well. I did a drawing of Scarface for some drunk guy who's like, stumbling over to my little art station, and he just loved Scarface. He wants me to draw Scarface. So I'm like, okay, I'll try to draw that. And then so I spend the week doing that. I come back with it all matted. I didn't frame it, but I had it matted. And then he never never showed up.
I would not be good. I just
Life
wish I could
lessons.
do that. Yeah, I mean, I tried, like, even just doing face painting for volunteering for school when the kids were younger. I backed out of that because I started to get just too panicked because a kid would go, draw me a butterfly. And then suddenly I'd be like, wait, what does a butterfly look like? I don't know what a butterfly looks like. Here's a
I think
square.
there's certain people who have a decorative style, although you have a sort of decorative style. My style is somewhat decorative, but like I'm just not good at that stuff either. Like
Yeah.
there's a couple people I know, they're not great illustrators per se, but they can do that kind of stuff that you're talking about all day long. Like they can do decorate a cake or draw,
Hmm.
something on a face. I can't do it
Yeah.
either.
Yeah.
Anyway, performance art. Let us know in the comments if you have drawing anxiety. I was thinking when I was in Japan, because I'm going to be leading some groups in Spain, and I was thinking we were at some of these sites, and there's hundreds of tourists around some of these shrines that we went to, and I
Mhm.
started to think to myself, oh my gosh, if I was at something like this and had 10 people in tow and I'm trying to do a demo, I would be terrified because of just how much is going on. And
Mhm.
so I got to rethink that plan. I don't know that I want to actually do that. So I mean, I don't know how many people can just be out in public and just nailing it all the time. But
Yeah. Do you think it would
anyway,
almost be easier with it being so populous and so many people that it almost cancels everything out and makes it less?
I don't know. I was so exhausted just from being at those sites anyway, not even drawing. Like I don't really like to draw in those situations, not because I'm nervous about the drawing, but there's just too much going on. And then I'm with my wife and kid, and so it's just
Yeah.
too much chaos. But for me, I think I'd rather have a workshop in a controlled sort of studio environment.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's how I am too. So you have to tell us a bit more about Japan because you live
Japan was
Yeah.
amazing. It was everything we wanted and more. My wife is from Japan. She's Japanese, so I guess that's how that works. So, so we had to. We were originally scheduled to go with her mom, who speaks obviously fluent Japanese and is from there. And then at the last second, her mom and dad got COVID, so
Oh
they ended
no.
up bailing. And so now all of a sudden we are going to all these places with no planning really and no language. But I'll start off by saying if you guys haven't used the current version of Google Translate, you can type into it obviously and get a phrase. Where's the bus, or where's my room, where's the bathroom, whatever. And that's easy. And you can talk into it and it'll speak the language, and that's pretty easy too. But the camera feature saved our butts while we were there, because we were traveling in some areas that have no English, and you hold your phone up and press the camera, and in real time it translates the sign, and in many times it
Wow.
tries to use a font like you're looking at.
Wow.
Wow.
It was incredible. It was
Wait, now how
absolutely
can it
amazing.
use how can it use a font like you're looking at if it's Japanese kanji?
Well, I mean, all the type is done in different ways. Like some of them will have outlines, or some of them will be done in a style. It doesn't match it perfectly,
Okay.
but it sort of tried. Like if something's hand drawn, for example,
Wow.
in Japanese, it'll come out with a hand drawn
Crazy.
word.
Wow.
It's just remarkable. So looking at a menu or sometimes a sign in the hotel, we would have no idea what these signs are saying, and so we'd have to scan our phones on it. It was crucial. I don't know how we would have done that
Did
trip without it,
did
but
Lisa ever learn any Japanese at all?
she had some functional basic phrases.
Hmm.
And then I had like 3 words that I could say, and I said them so many times that I actually gave myself a headache because I would bust them out as much as I possibly could, trying to look like I knew something. But it was amazing. I mean, we went to Tokyo and Kyoto, Nara, Osaka, and Toba, which is a beach town. So a couple things about it is really interesting. You know, everybody knows sort of, or everybody can picture what Tokyo looks like. It's like a big version of New York, except for it's clean. It's amazing. Like all this city life, all this stuff going on all the time, people zipping everywhere, and this vibrant, you know, high tech city. No trash, subways spotless, the bathrooms are spotless, public bathrooms. I mean, it in my opinion, it's humanity 3.0 that they figured
Yeah.
out over there because everybody actually cares about their space. It seems like everybody had this kind of universal agreement that we all have to share the city, so let's make it nice. And so even in Tokyo, I didn't see any bikes locked up.
Wow.
They're all just out on the street, just parked into the thing. You know, nice bikes too, and it was just incredible. And then we went from there to the beach town of Toba. And what's happened in Japan over the past 30 years, I'm sure a lot of people have already read some about this. It's happening in Europe too, where older generations are either dying off or going to old folks' homes, typically in the city, but so they can be better cared for. And then the younger kids, their offspring or whatever, are going to college in the big cities or going to work. And so basically everybody's leaving the city, these smaller cities.
Hmm.
And so in Toba, which is a beach town, we thought we were going to like a sort of resort-ish type place, and it was empty. And we just walking around, it's like out of a Miyazaki film. It's so pretty. All these buildings, like classic Japanese houses, and mixed with some modern hotels and stuff, but all overtaken by the jungle. It's all empty.
Really?
Wow.
I
Wow.
mean, not
So
just a few buildings. I mean, I can't stress it enough. Like we went to a little island just off. We took about like a 15, 20-minute boat ride, and we're coming to this quote unquote resort sort of area. Can't remember what that little island's called, right off Toba, and the entire town was gone. We were in a ghost town that
Was it
probably 30 years ago was a full city.
was it just eerily beautiful? I mean, it just seems like it would be
It was
kind of
spooky and it was hauntingly beautiful. I guess that's how I would describe it because it was sort of this modern. I mean, we've been to some ghost towns here in Colorado, you know, from the late 1800s, gold rush and that kind of stuff. And there's a similar feeling there. You kind of try to picture like, oh, what did this look like when it was vibrant and moving around? And oh my goodness.
uh,
But the difference is this is recent. Like there's cars and there's bikes and it's almost like everybody just left at once.
it's like an eerie
And
movie set or
yeah, it looks like a movie set. That's exactly right. And so I didn't like being there, but I'm
yeah.
glad we saw it because that is happening everywhere. And so you see these things. It's happening in Europe too, Italy in particular, where they're offering, you know, $30,000 for this house. They'll pay you to take the house, but you have to refurb it. And this is what they're trying to combat. And so it was just so weird to go from a city like Tokyo to that city. And so it was just a weird mix.
Yeah.
But
hmm.
and then the other cities were kind of like smaller versions of Tokyo. My favorite being probably Osaka or Nara. But all the food was amazing, and I
So
got
did you do
so much.
drawings and paintings?
I did some drawings, and now I'm starting to paint. I did the first painting yesterday, just in my sketchbook as a test. But I have got so much material to paint, and I'm excited to paint it. And I may do. I don't think I'm going to Kickstarter because I don't think there'll be a market for it. But I'd like to do a series of paintings, just of basically my version of what I saw in Japan, and through paintings and drawings. And just because it's so interesting, and the architecture is so beautiful, and the design was so, and that was my take home. You know, Jake always likes the bottom line. What'd you take
Yeah.
home from this whole experience?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The
Well,
thing
I'm
that I
just
took
laughing
home,
because I'm talking as I'm listening to you as if like Oh yeah, that is gorgeous. I've been through there, but realizing I was there on a treadmill with Tommy Rivers Puzzi doing a program through Japan, where I'm like, oh yeah, that place is gorgeous. Totally. I agree with you. Oh yeah,
Different.
people are great.
Um, what
That was all.
so, so my take home was that at least my impression of this, because I don't want to just be like stupid. This is how they think. But my impression of it was they care about the smallest details. There's no detail that's too small to be neglected. And so like you'd be just like walking to our hotel or something like that. You look over in the corner of this alleyway and there's like this little beautiful arrangement of plants with some rocks and some flags or decorative kind of features and stuff. And you see these little moments of beauty everywhere. And it's so small that it was kind of inspiring that they don't let any space go undesigned.
Hmm.
Wow.
And so that was a really, really cool kind of thing to notice. And that's one thing we're trying to build here at my house, because we're done with a first round of remodel and kind of stuck on what we're going to do next. And we're like, oh my gosh, just like straightening up your house and cleaning everything up and then thinking about it in an overall aesthetic kind of way has so much power. Like when we go to some of these hotels and it was so minimal but so beautiful, you just feel peaceful there. Versus the United States has a big sort of almost a collector mindset where we just
Mhm.
fill our spaces with stuff, and it wasn't like that. And I liked that better. So
Wow.
That's
Cool.
cool.
That's very cool.
pretty neat. Can I share my nudity story now,
Sure.
since we're talking about Japan?
Well, we're
So
doing
one thing that
stories
was
at the
interesting.
end. We're,
We
we're
do
Mhm.
doing we're doing
What's
stories at the end. Do you want to save it for that, or is it fit
Nah,
in
this
now?
is just a separate story. I'm sure I'll have
Okay.
another one. So in the town of Toba, we said again, that was one of the places that lost to time basically, except for a few really classic traditional kind of Japanese hotels and sort of luxurious places to stay. And we're staying in this beautiful hotel. I don't even know if you could call it a hotel, but a beautiful space and just traditional Japanese with the tatami mats and the sliding screens. I mean, it looked like a movie set too. And they had this basically onsen. It's a hot tub or hot springs area that is so spectacular. Japanese garden kind of style stuff, lanterns everywhere, and it's mixed or split bathing. So women are in their own space and the dudes are in their own space. And so I'm just so excited about going this thing because it is quintessential Japan to me.
hmm
And then they wouldn't let me in because I had tattoos. You
Oh,
can't go in there without with a tattoo. And so I was super bummed about that.
Can you
And
cover them
so
up?
what's that?
Can you cover them up?
Well, that was the next thing. And so I talked to the owner or like the manager down there at the lobby, and they gave me these like big band-aids to basically put on my stupid tattoos. I hate my tattoos anyway, but I am getting in some new ones to cover up. But anyway, they're not there yet. I have the dumbest tattoos of all time. And so I was going to cover it up, and then I found out that they require you to be naked. You can't not be naked. And so I thought, this is so odd. I can't go in there because I have a little mark on my shoulder, but I have to show you me in all my glory. It's just the weirdest mix of things. I just could not understand it. But anyway, I didn't get to go and I'm with my son. I don't want to be totally naked with my son. I didn't grow up like that. I'm sure if you grew up like that, it is no big deal. But I'm not
it's not a
naked.
big deal. I grew up like that. It's in England. I mean,
Really?
yeah. Yeah.
So
And
you dropped trowel without even thinking about it.
well, it to the point where I think that I don't want to say anything more. I'm just, but it's like,
Anyway,
it's
I've
really,
never done that, and so it's just not part of my day to be
yeah,
naked
I
in
think
front
it's
of my
just a
kid.
culture difference. I mean, it's just a
Right.
culture difference.
Anyway, that's my naked story. So I didn't get to go in this gorgeous little space.
Wow.
All right.
All right.
Well, all right.
That's a
With
story.
that, we are going to
What?
talk a little bit about our advice for people that are illustrators that are up and coming on getting their portfolios up to snuff, right?
Talk about a perfect transition.
Perfect.
That
Yeah.
was
Like,
so smooth.
I mean,
Will.
like you're you're talking about like being naked, your body, but some people's portfolios seem naked, right?
There we
Okay.
go.
Yeah,
That's the
Okay.
Will Terry.
your
So
Yeah.
let's
body of
dress them
work.
up. Let's
We
get them
got to
dressed
fix
up.
our bodies of work.
That's right.
It's funny to call them portfolios still. I feel like there should be another name for it. Do you remember when they were actually portfolios?
Well, remember when we used to call them a
Yeah.
book? Used to call them a book.
I do remember that.
Your book.
See your book.
Yeah.
So do you guys want to start with, like, we could go around and just do a couple pieces of advice for
Sure.
maybe it's like the biggest mistakes we see in portfolios and how to correct it, kind of a thing.
Okay.
Well, are we going to read the? Should we read the question? Is there a question?
No,
We're
it's
gonna
not a
do the
question. It's just,
question after. I think there's a question about.
this was
some
an
of the-
assignment from Jake to talk
Yes,
about.
Jake
Oh.
sent us the rules in order.
So yeah. So in full transparency, this is Jake's fault. I'll start.
Okay, you go.
Is that okay?
Don't take what I'm going to say though.
I'm going to take yours and I'm going to make
Oh,
it
wait.
better. So basically, one of the things that I see students do the most, I would say, is that they put like when you first start out, you do all kinds of different pieces of art because theoretically a lot of people are taking classes, and so they might take a figure drawing class, they might take a 3D class, 3D drawing class, they might take a design class, and I'll see often like remnants of that in their portfolio, some of the best things they did in college or something. And so I might see like a figure drawing in there. And I know that when you did that figure drawing, you have an emotional attachment to how good it was. Like, it was the best one that you did, and you want to include it in there because it demonstrates that you can draw the figure. But I see that as a mistake, because what the client is looking for when you show your portfolio, if they're perusing your website, is they're looking for art that will make them confident to be able to hire you to do their job, and they're not hiring you to do a figure drawing. So your figure drawing needs to be demonstrated in the art, that in an illustration that could be, that they can look at and go, ooh, I see that they did this. Maybe they could do that for me.
Yeah, that's great.
So there's my one. I wanted to take that because I knew Lee was going to say that one.
That wasn't actually mine. That was a little weaker than mine. So I'm glad you led with that so I can clean up that mess.
That's why he's been taking notes.
No, my tip on portfolios is assume the viewer knows nothing and make an interesting image for that person, because the biggest thing that I see is, especially, in programs and genres, I guess, where you're storytelling, is I can think about a story. I'll come up with a story, and I'm thinking about it so much. Oh, this character's doing this, and this character thinks this way, and this is their personality. And so then I draw a picture. I've got all that background information in my head. I draw an image of something, and I don't convey all that stuff to you in the image because I'm already assuming that stuff. The bully is mean and this character's nice and whatever, then this person's jealous. But I don't show it in the illustration. And then you wonder why it gets a flat response. And it's because the viewer doesn't have the information. You're bringing so much information in your head to the story, but you're not telling it on the piece of paper.
In fact, we just got a letter this last week from How to Fix Your Art, where one of our really good students, was really upset with us for some of the comments we made on their piece, based on the fact that we were saying, hey, there's no story here. We can't see the story. We can't tell what the story is. And and this person was basically saying, there's a great story here. You guys just don't know it, and you shouldn't criticize this great story because it's a great story. But there was no context. There was no story conveyed in the piece. There's no story accompanying the piece. So it looked very, very abstract.
Yeah.
And that's what I think that what you're saying, Lee, is you can't afford to look very abstract to a potential client because they don't relate to what
Now,
you're.
one thing I do want to clarify here is you don't have to beat somebody over the head with the concept either, but it needs to nudge people in that direction. And so my how I would combat this problem, if you have this problem, you can do this too, is we would be having this discussion in, let's say, a critique group in class, but everybody in class knows the assignment. Everybody in class probably knows what the person was doing, so they're not a good focus group for that piece. And so I would just say, hold on one second. I walk out in the hall, see somebody walking by. Hey, can you come here for a minute? They come in. I just hold the piece up. I don't say anything. I say, tell me what's going on here. And tell me, like,
Mhm.
if you can, list 3 keywords of what
Yeah.
you think's happening, or the overall feel of the piece. And if those 3 keywords don't line up with what the person is trying to do, it's a failure of communication. And now I do want to add also that it can be a great illustration. Doesn't mean somebody knows what's going on.
Even now, I will often bounce work off of colleagues, so to speak, because when you're so invested in it yourself, you really sometimes are not able to step outside and look at it from the perspective of someone that doesn't know everything going into the drawing.
Right.
And you yourself would be like, but no, it makes total sense. This is clearly this situation, like this story is happening. And so there's been quite a few times, even recently, where I'll show work to someone and I'll be surprised. Wait, what do you mean you don't see that this is happening?
Mhm.
Because I'm too into it and I was there from the beginning. And so do not have the ability to step outside of it prospectively and
Mhm.
need other opinions. So I absolutely agree. And that will be there consistently throughout your career. You'll get better at it, but
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
will always
Yeah. So
happen.
ask people, but and also while you're creating something, come up with here's what I want to show, and then start to say, okay, how do the art? What's my concept, and then how do the art elements support that concept? So what's the gesture that the character's doing? What's the facial expression they're doing? Even their hand gesture, what they're doing, is important to the piece. And so everything basically should always point back to that main idea. And then you start showing it to other people too. And if you do both of those things, use all the art elements to support the concept, and then get some feedback from people who don't know what you're doing, there's no way you're going to fall into that trap. So
Yeah,
you can do it.
that's a good one. Mine is a little bit more specific. I guess I was trying to think of some things that might be a little bit out of the box in terms of what you typically feedback wise get for portfolios. But my biggest quote pet peeve, I guess, I don't know how to say that differently, would be clothing in terms of portfolios for picture books. A lot of times I notice that illustrators that are doing the portfolios or present them to me, the kids' clothing is quite just boring, so to speak. It's like
Mhm.
a shirt and pants or a skirt without really thinking, is this really how kids are dressing? Like look up, even on Pinterest, looking up kids' fashion and clothing, or just looking and observing around you and watching, like if you've got kids and their friends, but just paying more attention to really how kids dress, because it's just so easy to just go straight to just basic plain shirt pants, and you could do so much more with the character and getting
Mhm.
the personality out through the clothing. And that extends itself into, oftentimes I'll see bedroom scenes where the kids in a bedroom and even the objects and the decor are more stereotyped old school. This is a bedroom where there's a train and there's a planet hanging from the ceiling
Mhm.
and there's a, like, is that really how kids have their rooms? And just being mindful of that, of being more connective to kids now that are reading these stories, that they see
Mhm.
more their environments
That's
reflected.
really really good advice,
Yeah.
to write for the kids, and to think about their personalities and what's current now. I think it's easy to just, like you said, just stereotype kids. Okay, pants, shirt with a star on it or something, a rocket ship over in the corner. I mean, it's so easy to
You
do
just
that.
described every one of my child bedroom scenes that I've painted.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, even looking at your studio now, Will, I mean, there's some really specific stuff there
Mhm.
that starts to say who you are, and so, I mean, I don't know. I do think just getting a little more specific, and also aging things. Like, it doesn't always have to be like new pants and new shirt. That's my biggest pet peeve with that kind of stuff, is it looks like
Yeah.
people just went to Target and bought all the entire room, instead of having like a toy that's taped together because it's broken. It
Hmm.
just
Yeah.
looks all off the shelf.
Yeah. And then in some kids, maybe when you're doing a narrative piece, I, from personal experience, very well know that some kids, the same shirt will be worn multiple days in a row. And that might be part of the character. So just maybe diving a bit more into the character that you're portraying and kind of asking yourself those questions of what kind of stuff do they like to wear? Do they like putting clothes on? Are they more just want to
Hmm.
put pajama pants on and wear those every day? Or do they just kind of asking yourself a bit more questions about the environment and the way they're dressing?
That's one of
Hmm.
my
Um,
favorite things about Star Wars actually, is that they chose to go for a futuristic kind of stuff with all the spaceships and, you know, lightsabers and worlds and stuff, but it's an old system to them. And so everything in that universe is aged and beat up, and it's so cool to, I mean, that's what makes that so interesting, that kind of aesthetic.
yeah, yeah. So that's one of mine. And
Okay.
then,
That was a good one.
Yeah, that's a really
Better
good.
better than Will's.
oh yeah,
All right. I'm gonna have to up my game here. So I have another one, and it's called Better Than Lee's next one that he's going to do. So this one is more. This one goes more to the content again, and to kind of build on what I was saying before is I'll see someone's portfolio and they say, I say, well, what do you want to do with your art? And they say they want to do children's books, right? Or let's say it's graphic novels or whatever. But their portfolio doesn't reflect any children's work, right? It doesn't reflect any graphic novel work. So you need to, um, in addition to not putting in like just random figure drawing or student work, um, from school, you need to also include the kinds of things that people are looking for. And so like if you want to do children's books, you've got to have children doing um, activities together, or scenes that demonstrate kids doing kid things, or telling stories of the interesting stories that kids would be involved in different ages. um, I actually have put together a list here, and many people have emailed me for this list over the years, and I would love to give it to anybody that's listening. And it's basically it's 100 plus things you need to have in your children's book portfolio, but you could apply this to a graphic novel portfolio. You could apply it to a book cover portfolio, whatever it is that you want to do, and you could substitute some of the things. But basically, like it goes over things like you know ages, kids' ages, gender, race, group activities, character consistency, animals, creatures, vehicles, props, environment. I mean, just like the list and goes on and on and on. Now, if you have 100 things here that I think you should be demonstrating that you can do in your portfolio, you're not going to have 100 pieces in your portfolio to demonstrate each one. My suggestion is you try to fit, 5 to 10 of these things on the list in one illustration. And what a lot of people will say is, well, I don't, I mean, like this is my portfolio right now. I came out of school. This is what I have to show. And if I took all my student work out, I'd have nothing. That is a complete fair criticism of the advice that I'm giving right now. But it is on you to replace that work as fast as you can. Um, because I mean the reality is you need a different portfolio than when you came out of school.
yeah.
Yeah. So and if you want to get this list, please email us. You're actually going to email to support@svslearn.com. That's support@svslearn.com. And I will arm Annalise with this file, this PDF, and she will send it to you for free. All you have to do is ask.
Pretty good.
Sounds
I'm
good.
going to use that as an opportunity to push our big push that is happening with SVS. I know you guys have been talking about it on the podcast, but we are changing our entire format and we are changing our entire school. everything is being geared towards being social and being a community and being trying the overall idea is that we want to help you guys more and interact with you more. We all know how well watching videos works without any kind of feedback loop. It's very difficult. Matter of fact, I have 2 watercolor demos that I've bought and I haven't even watched them all the way through. It's just sort of the way it goes. I have the plan to watch them all the way through, and I probably will, but to do the work, am I going to do the work that's involved with them? I don't know. But if I had some kind of accountability, if I had 5 people that were doing these videos with me, and I could show people, hey, I got stuck on this part. What'd you do? It's a totally different game. And that's what we're changing to. And I don't know when this podcast is going to air, but it's coming up really quick. We're working round the clock right now to build this new format and all this stuff. So we'll have more to say about that, but I just wanted to use that as a sort of a springboard. Will's list, which is a good list. I'm going to give him props on that.
Yeah.
Why, thank you.
Okay, so my next tip, which is better than Will's list, is live in your worlds a little longer. One thing that I see with students is they do a piece and they're like, okay, I did that piece. Now I got to start over. Okay, now I did that piece. Now I got to start over. And so it becomes a lot of basically non sequiturs in the work. And some of them are good, some of them are bad, but whatever. Hang out with a theme if you can. And so whatever you do, as a minimum, maybe do 3 paintings in that theme. And that's sort of what I'm taking back from Japan. Oh, I'm not just going to do 1 painting from Japan. I'm going to do 20. Even when I was in school, like I did an image, we had this assignment. I can't remember why I generated this idea, but I wanted to illustrate people setting really stupid world records. And so I did the first one, and I had such a good time with it that I was like, I'm just going to keep going, because there is some ridiculous world records that people have set, like teacup stacking and just the dumbest stuff. And so I set up, I did like probably 10 paintings in this series. And then that led to writing a book about a kid who wants to set a world record. And so you just sort of hang out in that. Let me cap that at the end. If the book got published, I was going to try to attempt to set some stupid world record as a way to launch the book. But it never got picked up. So it wasn't worth it, I guess. But if you hang out in these spaces, you'll find that the first work is interesting, but maybe not as deep as you can go. And the second work starts to become interesting. You start to learn the world a little bit. And the third on, you are cooking, and you start to understand the marks and the palette and all that stuff. And it gives you so much. A lot of people struggle with making a portfolio because it's a lot of work. But once you're in a world, it's easier to make that work than starting from scratch.
Making crepes. So like always, when you make crepes, the first one you toss right away, and then so you're just making art crepes.
Art crepes. That's
art crepes.
It's got to be a website. Anyway, that's my tip.
Okay, that's a good one. I was thinking also, again, these are just very specific and honed down. And another thing, keeping in mind of characters, is while Will was saying to reflect different age groups, which is really important, I do want to stress that it doesn't mean that grandparents are always gray hair with glasses and like a female, like with a collar around, or the granddad's got a cane. And so that, just to be careful, there's a lot of grandparents that are, look at Will, very hip and happening, but a lot of grandparents that are not that stereotype that's been kind of portrayed for so long, that you can still illustrate people that are in that stage of life more on trend with a lot of people now that are grandparents that don't necessarily look like they're coming from the Golden Girls, which aren't the characters on that show technically supposed to be like 50, 53?
Yeah, they're younger.
And then the Sex and the City show is like the same age. So that kind of demonstrates how there's some updating that needs to happen illustration wise with the times. So I think that's an important thing to also realize, is that
I have a depressing non sequitur that goes along with this. So speaking of being old and dying, is that what we're talking about?
Wow.
I read when I was on the plane, so I'm reading all kinds of stuff because I'm on a 10-hour flight, but I read that the big jumps in are in pushing our age. You think like, oh, medicine's getting so good, we're going to potentially start to live to 110 as an average, 120, 100. How long is that average? And the article I read says the big jumps have already happened, and that in terms of lifespan, we're only getting, medicine gets a little bit better. Maybe you get an extra 6 months, maybe you get an
Mm.
extra year, and maybe the quality of life during that phase is better, but we're not all of a sudden, oh, that's a 10-year new leap in our life expectancy. And
Right.
so I'm bummed about that. I was like, I'm going
There,
to be 200.
there is actually like a 20-year leap technology, and it's called pickleball.
Pickleball Paul, pick it up. It's your local.
No, I mean, like, playing pickleball extends your life.
It's true.
Yeah.
The
Well,
racket sports do, and so do any like I read a whole thing about skiing and snowboarding, and so sports like that. If you can,
Mhm.
I think it really comes down to anything. If you're engaged in life and doing something active, what
Mhm.
is not going to extend your life about that?
Yeah.
true, true.
Anyway, that's a good non sequitur to go to the next question about illustration.
Well, what other tips? Do you have more tips that we can go
No
around?
more portfolio tips.
No more.
I don't have any.
I think
Okay,
we
I
I
do
think we
have one.
did good.
Yeah, can I do one more though?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uno más.
I have one more. So it just because it popped into my brain, and another thing for me is colors, and in terms of it kind of goes with the depicting grandparents always a certain way or bedrooms a certain way, and approaching color that way as well, where it doesn't always have to be where the grass is green, the sky is blue, the I know that we had seen a portfolio that'll probably be part of that question that we're about to air, but how a witch
Mhm.
is always with black cloak and a black, like, does it have to be these defined colors all the
Mm.
time, that you can switch it up and play
Break
around
out of the
with it?
stereotypes. Yeah.
Break out of the this is what the color of a tree trunk is. This is what, and that there's a lot of work now, gorgeous work, where I mean we're in just a beautiful era of books where there is this push and experimentation with color. But in terms of emerging portfolios, I tend to see more of the traditional color assignments for what objects are supposed to be happening way
Mhm.
more than needed. And I think some push and play with that could really elevate your portfolio as well. So that, I just wanted to say that one too.
No, that's a good
That's
one. I mean,
great.
I tell you this: when I see green grass and a blue sky, that typically, unless it's done just exceptionally well, I'm already moved on to the next thing. Like
Yeah.
it's so boring to see that midday kind of color palette. That's just so typical: red barn, green grass, blue sky. It's just so boring. So she's right. There's a lot more fun that you can have. And I will say, if you are stuck, like, okay, what color do I make it? You want to start to key your paintings or key your illustrations. And that just means lean them to one thing. You could say, I'm going to do an overall, violet kind of scene, and you can change your local colors and colors within that. But if people had to pick kind of the main idea of the color, it's violet or it's teal or it's yellow or whatever. And so that starts to kind of lean your palettes instead of picking like, okay, what color, the barn's blue now. And then that can seem so random. So if you start looking at movies that and start to kind of break down color scripts, and a great way to do that is to look at like the art of Monsters Inc. That's a new movie, isn't it?
Mhm.
The Art of Monsters Inc. or any of the Pixar films are so great. They put out all the color scripts, and you can see like each scene is keyed to a certain kind of thing. And you can say, oh, that's how they're
Yeah.
doing that and playing with the colors versus just picking things at random. Because if you're just making stuff up, you'll do exactly what Sam just said: is green grass, blue sky, red barn. So
Mhm.
boring.
Good
All right.
note to end on that.
I need to update my movie list. I can't be using Monsters Inc. How old is this?
Hey, so we do have some viewer questions, and we'll see how many we can get through. Might only be one, but let's start with this first one. And let's see, can we use your name? Yes. This one's from Jackie. I've been building out my portfolio and did my first round of submissions to 6 agents and was rejected by all. 2 giving some helpful feedback that my style won't sell in the US or UK markets. Their advice was to look at popular children's books currently on the market for inspiration, but I can't pinpoint exactly what's off about mine. I actually like my style and worked hard to create something that I felt was different. So I'd love your expert advice on if I should continue to build my portfolio in this style, hoping that eventually someone wants me, or work on changing my style to try to fit with what's selling. And if you think I should change my style, can you give me any guidance on what exactly isn't working with my own? Thank you. Okay. So, and we can share this. Can we share this?
Yes, I believe so.
She says yes on the name, but
I think she said yes.
can we share? I don't see a yes on that.
Well,
It says go for it.
yeah, it
Oh,
says
go
go
for it.
for it
There it
right
is.
under
Yep.
that.
Okay. Sorry, I was looking for a yes. All right.
So while he's pulling that up, can I take the first stab at the critique?
Yep.
All right. You pulling it up well?
Yeah.
So this work is, for starters, it's really good. Like there's the palette's really nice, the shape, language. It's a simple kind of children's book style. The website overall looks pretty modern and fresh. So I think there's some good things happening there for sure. The downside of what I see is sort of like what Sam was talking about, that it's almost stereotypical kids. Like basically the idea is kids are always happy. Kids like just hugs, and they should be happy and getting hugs all the time. Which isn't there's no tension. I mean, kids have the same dramas that adults do and that high school kids do and college kids do. It's just a different problem for them at that age. But they're jealous, they're mad, they're ecstatically happy, they're sentimental, they're everything. And I think where you could go, where this artist could go, is leaning into some of that stuff and creating some tension, because that's, for me, this is just my take on it. There's
Mm.
no moment of tension. I don't care about these characters. They're just all happy. They're just kids being happy. And so what that translates to me is some level of generic, even though she's starting to set up some very interesting stories and some interesting characters. They
Mhm.
haven't been fully explored yet. And I think but she's got the chops and the
Yeah.
palette and all the stuff.
Mhm.
So 6 months from now, this portfolio, in my opinion, should be redone, adding tensions of a child. There needs to be times where there's a conflict of some
Yeah.
story or
So,
something.
and what I hear you saying as well in that is when you get assignments from early on, if you want to do children's books, you're going to often get textbook illustration assignments. Some of them aren't the best to work for, but they're a great place to cut your teeth. Those kinds of assignments always come with a purpose of illustrating a very specific story, which, like Lee was saying, has a conflict, a problem. They're not all sad. They're not all filled with angst, emotions, and tribulations. But at the same time, they're not all happy, and they're specific in different emotions that are going on. Maybe one character's happy, another one's really sad, and why? And you're exploring that story.
It just reminds me of the first job that I got out of school was I think it was for Cricket Magazine, and I had to do, I think I had like a 4-page spread, but the story was super specific, and that's one thing that I just remember about it. It was basically the story, a fantastical story of the origin of Spanish moss. If you've been to the South, you'll see that hanging from all the trees and stuff. And the story this writer wrote was that this old grandpa with this insanely long beard gets a tornado comes through and swoops. This is called Uncle Septimus's beard, and it swoops him up, and we never see Uncle Septimus again, but his beard ends up all over the southeastern United States, and that's the origin of Spanish moss. And you can already see like how specific that story is.
Mm-hmm.
How many times have you seen? Like I remember the illustration I did. I was struggling with it, and that's where I actually learned the technique of setting the table before the main thing happens. So instead of drawing him in the tornado and getting spread around, I remember the illustration really clearly that the tornado is starting to come through and his beard had just started to wrap up, but he hasn't been sucked up yet. So there's a moment where now the viewer is getting this moment of like, do the math, like, oh, follow the beard back. Oh, there's a tornado. It's already wrapped up. In the next like couple seconds, this guy's life's going to change dramatically. And people I think readers like that. Where they're kind of storytelling, into the future a little bit. They have to do a little bit of storytelling themselves to understand what's going on. And so my point is, it's just such a specific character. It's such a specific story. And if I had it in my portfolio, and it was a series of images because it came with a layout, and it was a great portfolio piece. I ended up getting a lot of work from that because it was so specific and because it was a narrative.
Mm.
Yeah.
This is not something to change, but this is just a caution. When sometimes you'll get advice on your portfolio, you'll get advice on your style specifically, and when someone looks at your work and says, well, it's not marketable and you need to update your style, I actually think they're trying to say what we're saying. Don't you think, Lee? Like they're but they don't know how to really give you a good critique, so
or they just don't have the time to really go into that. They're giving you sort of the generic version of that.
Right. And it comes out as change your style. And what they really mean is like some of the stuff that you're saying, that Sam's saying, that Sam is going to say, because now she's back. But basically, like my caution is, don't like. And I in your letter, Jackie, I read like, do I really need to like? This is what I kind of felt you saying was, really, do I really need to change my style? I've worked really hard on this style. I like my style. To me, that is the indication. Don't change your style. Like I got that advice 2 or 3 times from reps, my own reps, which were like, hey, your colors need to be updated. They're too bright. They're too like, I'm like, colors don't, there's the whole palette that you have access to use. There aren't colors that are acceptable this year and unacceptable next year. There are style trends that you see in stores, and guess what? If you change to try to match those, by the time you get your portfolio out there, they'll be on to different colors.
Yeah.
Right. And also, like, if you love your style, like you have to love what you're doing enough that you want to show up the next day. If you go chasing style because of someone else said so, and you end up not liking it as much, then you don't want to create, then you're not making art, art's not evolving, and you're not progressing.
Well, the worst thing is too, it's not genuine.
Yeah.
At that point, you're like, well, they told me I'm
Yeah.
supposed to change it, but I don't want to. And anyway, style is not the problem here, and color palette's not the problem. Those are actually the good things
Yeah.
that's happening in your portfolio.
Yeah, because I think if you changed your style, those same issues are going to surface with the next style. And I think it's more about addressing the issues that I'm seeing in front of me, because it's a lot of great work. And my notes are being mindful of being decorative versus narrative. There's quite a few pieces in there that are just sweet decorative pieces, but they don't do anything narratively speaking for me to suggest that you can really take a story through your illustrations. Perspective is another thing. A lot of things I see are just straight on front perspective shots versus giving me some variety, some bird's eye view, some I can see a little bit, but for the most part, everything's pretty much straight on. And I would like to see change in that, of just doing some real zoomed in moments, looking up, like just giving me some variety in terms of what you're portraying online. And there's some great, like, so I can see the one story that she had put, the cover. I really do love that cover. And I can tell with the roar, the very big secret, I can tell because of the author name that's put on there that it's from a Make Art That Sells course. I've just recognized that from seeing it before. But she could add in a transitional image there that shows something happening between, that gives you an opportunity to show expression or that tension moment, and give clients the ability to see that you can do a continuous story from
Mm-hmm.
first, like, and you've got a couple of opportunities with some of the work that you're showing here. And because of that, then it would also give you another chance to demonstrate that you can work with text and work with knowing how to give negative space to allow for the text to come where it needed to. So there's a lot of things that you can play with. I think this is a good start. But kind of honing in on some of these key things, I think would help elevate the portfolio.
Oops. Sorry, I'm looking at some of my old work, trying to find something that'll work for this. Sorry,
That was
Sam, I
good.
threw you off.
That was a good crit, Sam.
Yeah.
You're good at this.
It's my first crit, really. I mean, thanks very much. But yeah, I just worry that I wouldn't want her to just quickly jump into changing the style too much, because then I fear that there would be a lot less confidence in feeling like you can do this, because I can see that you can, but changing the style is still going to have those issues come the next go round, and then you might feel really defeated, and you really have what it takes to get there. It's just learning how to look at it from the perspective of someone doing narrative illustration. And you just need.
Well, that's what I was going to say. To sum this one up, like Jake would do, she's really close. I mean, because she looks so comfortable in the style, and I think the style looks so good, that the changes that we're talking about making can happen just like that. I mean, I'm thinking in 3 months, an entirely new portfolio she could have up, and I think it would be work generating quite a bit if she does that. So sometimes we see people where they really do need to work on some of the styles not working, or it looks dated or something like that, and that's a much harder fix. All we're asking you to do is go find some interesting stories. I mean, you don't even have to make them up. Go, like I said, go, if you're doing the children's market, go get a Cricket magazine and re-illustrate some of the stuff from there. I mean, they've already had it, vetted, and it's a pro writer. Just illustrate some stuff that, any story that you think's interesting.
I think that's the perfect point, because taking a picture book that you love or you enjoy and just redoing it in your own way, because a lot of these images, while they're great, to me, they come across as response prompts for, let's say you're doing 30 days of this and today's thing is sadness, or today's thing is that, and I feel like a lot of these illustrations I'm looking at are those prompt assignments versus that's how I'm feeling. Like even with the polar bear, maybe it's something about Northern Star. Like there's something to me that suggests that she's responding to a word of the day, let's draw the illustration, that you see often in those monthly kind of competitions.
I was going to say the one that we're looking at right here with the family on the porch, that doesn't happen. Like unless they're posing for a picture, right? Like so if they're posing for a picture, then make it. I would make the story about taking the picture, like all the things that are going wrong. The dog coming in and messing things up, and I don't know,
knocking over the camera.
But yeah, like this is it's pretty, but you're not gonna sell. Like the content of your illustrations is more important than the style. So when people tell you to change the style, I think they're really telling you to change the content.
Yeah, and even like that family portrait one, that also comes off as a commissioned doing a family portrait for somebody that gave you a picture, and then you kind of tweaked it a little bit to try to have some fun with it. So some of these do come across more freelance or decorative versus narrative, but even just that roar one, I really think you could explore that a bit more. And I wonder if from the class that she took with that assignment, if there were some spread examples that she was supposed to do for that she could use here for her portfolio. So just giving some sense of knowledge of, I would like to do a story and know how I can take text, respond to text, and show that with a couple of examples. But she's got a lot going for her. It's just
it's good. It's good work. You just need to take it to the next level.
Hey, if
And
any of you guys do end up doing some of the stuff that we were talking about, I'd love to see the updated. Can you imagine in like 3 months or 5 months, she sends us the link
Yeah.
yeah,
and to see the old portfolio and the new one? I would love to see that. So if you do end up updating it, please let us know.
yeah,
Yeah.
for
Some
sure.
great stuff. So
Yeah. Well, I think we did it today. Do you guys do you want to tell a couple of stories?
sure.
We've been doing this new thing. Like the podcast is kind of over. We haven't stopped yet. But then we tell you guys stupid stories from our lives. And
So dinner table stories. Dinner
people
table
in the
stories.
YouTube comments and on some of the other comments on our podcast have said, keep doing the stories. So
Yeah, we should do some. Mine is really small, but I love it. It's just simple and sweet. But I
then
like it.
you need to go
Okay.
first.
Okay.
I was just thinking about it because of talking about Europe in the beginning and knowing that I grew up in England. I thought of my son and his ultimate revenge on me when he was younger. So I grew up in England, so everything is said a certain way, and I always called my mum because that's how you say mum, is M-U-M, which is very pertinent to the story, by the way. And then when I eventually moved to Canada with my husband and we had our two boys, I was super excited because I was like, oh yes, it continues. My kids will be able to say mum because that's how they do it the English way here, and it's brilliant, and I'm so happy and I feel at home. So I had the two boys and I was like, this is the best life ever. They're calling me mom. I love it. And then my eldest one got to the fours, the fours where you start challenging and you start kind of testing things. And he knew me and he knew how much that meant to me. And there was a day where he was really annoyed with me. I can't remember what the thing that happened, but he was really upset. And I had put a drawing on the table for him, and it was probably for when he got home from school. I can't remember what it exactly was, but it was a little drawing and it had love mum on it. And I think he was really angry because I either didn't let him watch a show or something that he was retaliating against. And he looked at me very wickedly. And he slowly went to the cupboard, took out a crayon. He came back out, and while looking at me, he put the crayon on the one end of the U and closed it and made it an O. And he dropped the crayon and he walked away. And I was so, and he knew how much that hurt. And then that was it. Simple but powerful. It took days to get over that one. Days.
That prompted. I'll let Will go last because he's probably got a better one than this.
But
this
before
is
you move on, that was really cool, Sam. But I just want to hear you do your English accent on a podcast one time.
One day.
One day.
But you have to
the whole
think about
time.
mum as from a parent perspective, because a kid really can't scream mum to a volume that causes, like, if you just try it, like if a kid screams mom, you can get loud, but mom,
Right.
there's a limit, and it's a really
trying to hold that U is tough.
Yeah, there's a reason. It's a brilliant move. But that was one of his best moves ever.
That's cool.
How did you react to that?
I was in shock. I was in shock. I was worried that the U days were over, so it was a good one.
That story for some reason just reminded me of, I have a twin brother. Didn't remind me that I have a twin brother, but a story with my twin brother. When we were really young, we found, I guess we were probably about that same age. 4 or 5 is what I'm thinking, but I don't know, somewhere around there. And we had, I don't know what we were doing, but we ended up going through my mom's purse. And I don't know how we had access to her purse, but we found, it was in February, and we found the 2 Valentine's cards that my mom was going to give us. And one of them was really cool, and the other one we didn't like at all. And we put them back in, and my mom had no idea that this happened. And so Valentine's Day comes. There's the cards. We open them up. My brother gets the good one, and I immediately open it and start screaming and punching him and crying. And it was just, I can just picture some of this stuff that happens as kids now from my mom's point of view, that we just open these innocent little Valentines, and all of a sudden just chaos ensues. And I'm crying. I rip up the Valentines. She has no idea what is going on. It's just so funny. That kind of embodies my whole childhood as a twin.
Oh my gosh. Well,
Like
it's
who's
like,
got the cooler
yeah.
stuff?
Oh, well, it's like, and then, sorry, Will, and we'll get to you, but it just, I have
No,
to,
no, no.
like,
Keep going.
this same child was just so smart in that way. And he was two and a half or three, and he went up for a timeout, and he knew how to get me there because he'd done something, went off for a timeout. He was coming downstairs, and he just looks at me. He puts his hand on my shoulder, and he goes, "Thank you for that gift." And I'm looking at him, he's like, "That was the best thing ever. Man, that was good. I loved that timeout. Thank you, Mom. It was a wonderful timeout." And I'm sitting there and I was like, oh my gosh, this is either kind of scary how good he was at
Yeah,
this.
that's next level.
Like, you're just under three, but it was like, and he just, for the next half hour, was like, "Man, that was great." And he would walk, and I go into the kitchen,
It's so good.
and then
Just
all of
lean
a,
into
yeah,
it.
and then I was going into the kitchen, and he's just whispering as he walks past, "What a timeout. Man, I love Mom. That was awesome." And it's like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what to do.
So he was a troll before he even knew
Yes,
the word
he
troll.
was really a
Wow.
talented troll.
Wow. Is he still like that now?
No, he is not. If he's listening, no, he is not ever. No, he's not. He's a great. It was just, he was really good at that. It was a talent.
Wow. That's impressive.
Awesome. What's your story, Will?
So when I was 9 or 10, and this was back in the time when, this is like in the ancient days, right? Because I'm like the oldest guy here in the room, right? We could ride our bikes anywhere, and like my dad grew up riding his bike anywhere, so my parents didn't have any limits,
Yeah.
right? You could
Fair.
ride as far as you could ride, and I lived just outside of Washington D.C., so one day I just decided to ride as far as I wanted into the city, right? If I looked at it now, it was probably like a couple miles, but it felt like I was riding all day, right? And I'm passing drunks and scary places and things, and I could tell it wasn't the best part of town. But all of a sudden I came to this pet shop, and I'm like, I'm gonna go into this pet shop. So I go in there, and you know, as a kid, you're like, am I allowed to do this? I'm all alone, you know, should I do this? And I go in there and I'm looking at all the animals and stuff, and I notice that they have gerbils for, I think it was just a couple of dollars. It was like $1 or $2. Maybe it was like nothing. Well, I had allowance, right? So I ended up riding back home, and I'm like, I really want a gerbil. So I asked my mom if I could get one when I got home, and she's like, no. My mom always said no to everything. Like that was just her default, you know. And I'm like, why not? Why not? Why not? Well, because this, that, and the other. Okay.
At least that's better than
So I'm
maybe.
like,
That's better than just doing
what?
the maybe where you never know.
Yeah.
Usually means no.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it didn't take long. I rode back to that pet shop, and I had enough money to buy a gerbil and a really cheap little cage, right? This little wire cage thing. So I am riding home with a gerbil that's freaking out in that cage because I'm holding it with one hand and riding with the other, right?
Oh my gosh.
So I'm riding home with this gerbil, and that would be an illustration in and of itself. I mean, like Lee's already going to paint it because he loves drawing like kids on bikes and stuff.
That's true.
So I get home, and I was like, I can't bring it in the house because I'm going to get busted. Well, we had this old 49 Chevy that was sitting in the driveway, and my dad was always going to fix, but never did, you know? So I was like, I know, I'll put him out there. So I put the cage out there, and for the next like week, I was going out and just spending all this time out there. And my mom's like, gosh, why do you like that car so much all of a sudden, you know? And I'm like, I just like pretending to drive, and I'm making up all these stories and everything. Well, one day I'm holding the gerbil, right? Because I would like hold it and then I'd put it back in the cage and all. I'm holding it, and it got a little freaky and jumped out of my hands onto the chair, onto the bench. And then anyway, long story short, it went through the floorboard. The floorboard was rusted out, it got through. I'm like trying to get it, and it's freaking out because I'm trying to get it. You know how they're like, it would have been fine if I had it, but because I'm trying to get it, it's like I got to get away. So now it goes through the floorboard, and so I'm like, I start crying because it's getting away, and I get down and I look under the car, and it's just under the car looking at me like, what do we do now, kind of a thing, you know? Well, now here comes my mom and the girls, and they're going shopping, and I have to go. They're like, come on, let's go. We're getting in the car. And I don't know what to do. My gerbil's under the car,
Oh, wait.
and I'm crying, and I'm like, Mom, you know, and I can't say anything. And she's like, what is wrong? Come on. And she sees me crying, and she's like, what's going on? And I'm like, my gerbil got away. What? You have a gerbil? You know, and this whole scene of discovery and everything. And she's like, well, we got to go. And how are we going to get, you know, and she didn't understand. And she's like, well, maybe he'll come back and get in his cage or something. Yeah, right. So I'm going to the next scene is I'm going to the store crying. And that's pretty much the end of the story. Now, in the children's book version, if I ever decided to do a children's book, I would go to sleep that night, and then I would wake up, and the gerbil would be sleeping in the bed with me. So it like figured out how to get in the house, you know. But what I realized from the gerbil, you know, because we kind of speak the same languages, he just didn't want to be caged. He's like, he's fine being my friend and living with me. So I create a little home under my bed, and then he just lives under there.
Can he talk in the book version?
Yeah, but only I can understand.
Does he look up you and just go, sup? And then you're like, oh.
He has like one human kind of trait, like he's wearing a little hat or something. You know, I was thinking while you were telling that story that it would be fun. We're never ever going to do this, but like short, like a 3-paragraph version of all these stories, and then have our peeps illustrate these stories.
Yes, I was just thinking that. I was just thinking that too. Yes, I love that idea.
Yeah, that was my gerbil story.
That's a great story. That's a great story.
That's a good one.
Well, Sam, do you want to take us out, Sam?
I will leave that to you two because I feel like you guys are the boss at that. I mean, do you have the ability?
Okay.
The reason I'm saying that is because I closed that email, so I don't know.
Oh.
I accidentally.
Well, then it's going to definitely default to Lee.
Yeah, it'll have to.
Okay, here we go. I'm taking us out. SVS. That's it. No, SVS has been brought to you by SVS, or the podcast has been brought to you by SVSLearn.com, where people go to draw cool stuff. Our hosts have been Sam, Will, and Lee.
Sup.
And Annalise. Sup. Annalise works for us. Lisa works for us. Daniel works for us doing videos. And go draw something.
And Lisa.
And yeah, Lisa. Did I not say Lisa? Lisa also works for us.
Now go draw something.
Draw something.
That was really poor, but you did a lot better than I would have. So.
I feel bad because I had it out, but then when I had to leave, it closed all my emails, so I didn't have the script.
It's fine.
We all realize how integral.
Nobody listens to that stuff.
We realize how integral Jake is in this whole process.
When you guys listen to a podcast, do you turn that part off when they're starting to go through the credits? I never listen to. I don't care how good the podcast is. I never listen.
I do only because before I was on, I would wait in anticipation for the banter after. I always liked the little bit of banter, and then I would be defeated and feel deflated of like, oh man, it really did turn off at the end. But it's like looking for the credits, extra credit things at the end of the movie, like for the little nugget.
That is so frustrating when that doesn't happen and you just watch the entire thing.
I actually had to listen to that for what?
We did that the other day. I can't remember what movie it was, but there was just nothing. And there were like 4 other groups waiting.
Yeah. So and we never talked about what we were up to. That was an assignment from Jake as well. He's going to be really having a hard time when he listens to this podcast.
What are you guys up to? How's your Kickstarter, Will? So you've moved on, sort of. Are the Kickstarter's got a week left, right?
Yeah, so it's got a week left. We'll probably hit 60,000, I'm thinking, and it was good. I mean, we have the money to print as many games as we dare print, and so totally successful there. I'm not sure if I'll get all of my ad money back on this, like right now, but with the list that we have of people who want games, who told us to contact them when we have physical games, and between that, toy stores, Christmas year-round stores, game stores, and Amazon and different places, I have a feeling that we're going to be able to do really, really well next year.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
looking forward to that. And
Awesome.
yeah, and trying to sell my golf cart today. So
Wow.
got that going for me.
Wow. Now,
Yeah.
how do you do that? Like, is it, I mean, you're in a community. Does everybody already have a golf cart in your community, or is there?
Do they race
Yeah.
the golf carts?
Do they what?
Race them?
I do, but you're not allowed. But I race people sometimes. I figured out how to do a burnout with it too. So there's one tire that drives, and it's the right rear. So
Okay.
if you make a right turn and hit the gas fully, if the battery's fully charged, you can get the tire to squeal. So there's
Nice.
that.
I would expect nothing less.
And
I've got some pretty good golf cart stories for next podcast.
You have stories for everything. I have no golf cart story. That's
We used to,
like
when
the
I was
one-upper.
when I was growing up, we used to have bottle rocket wars on golf courses at night.
How did you get to rent the golf cart?
Oh, there's no renting. There's
Oh,
no
boy.
renting here.
Wow.
wow.
I shouldn't have asked.
It's a chaos. I don't even know if I want to tell that story because it was so irresponsible. No eye protection, no anything, and 15 or 16-year-old boys firing bottle rockets at each
You
other.
were just too, like, it's so against everything in my rule following body. I mean, even I was on a walk with my husband last night, and he's like, he even brought it up. He goes, you just never broke rules. He's like, even when we were in college and dating together, and you'd go to a movie and you'd pay the ticket to go in and see one film, and then you'd go and catch the other film. It's like, I'll never forget when we did that with you. You broke down and cried and left and went and go and bought another ticket because you couldn't cope. I was like,
I think it comes with, I don't want to, again, stereotype, because I'm sure some girls do this, but it just comes with the territory, I feel like, of being boys. I don't ever remember a girl doing all this kind of stuff. There was no girls firing the bottle rockets at each other. But my wife is the same way as you. As a matter of fact, this morning we're walking the dogs. We have this huge, massive open space near us. I mean, it's the beginning of about 1,000 acres that leads up to the Rocky Mountains. And there's all these trails, single track trails, really fun to ride mountain bikes on and to hike on. We take our dogs over there and we turn on this new trail we hadn't been on, and it says no dogs allowed. But I'm not kidding. You can see in all four directions miles, and there is no one. There's no one in the parking lot, and she didn't want to walk the dogs.
I'm the same way. Totally, it's the same way. My husband and I went for a walk last night, and we always go past the high school, and there's the big track, and they have a gated doorway into the track, but the lights were off and the track was open, and Lou's like, let's just walk on the track, you like doing that. I was like, but it's the lights are off, and then what if they like close us in and they get really upset with us? And he's like, seriously, there's no one here, it's just, we can walk on the track. And then we got up, I'm like, I can't do it, I can't. I turned around and he's, wow, you really live life. Like,
I try to think of rules like that as being like, okay, what are they really trying to avoid here? And then I look at the principle, like, am I going against? So I'm kind of like reading into the rule.
yeah, like, what's the worst thing that happens? Yeah.
A lot of inmates had that same philosophy, Lee.
I'm not saying it's always been wise, but when you take the golf cart, that's where you go over the line. But I'll walk the dogs in a big open space. I don't care about that. I don't break the rules anymore. That was the old one.
Well, that was good. So turned into
Yeah.
a podcast of stories. So that was good. Yeah. So are we done recording then, or?
I think
Wait,
so.
You didn't say what you were doing though.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm making paper sardines. See here,
Oh, that's cool.
paper sardines.
Oh, like
Oh,
literally the can with the sardine with the little
wow.
fishies in
Yeah.
there.
You'd think I could just put paper over a sardine tin, but that would mean I'd actually have to open a tin of sardines. So it's just paper.
Yeah.
But
You may find this
Is that
hard to.
for a book or an illustration? What's that
it's
for?
for so and then I know we can just stop whenever, but um it's more of a breakthrough moment of after having gone, I'm sure you've both gone through this, where I think it's been like a 4 month period of just block and burnout, and I was really struggling, feeling almost where you're like, do I even want to create anymore and draw? I don't know what I'm doing. It was a really tough, when you're in it, it feels like forever.
Mhm.
And usually when I go through one of those, it can last like 4 or 5 months, and I know that it's going to come through the other side. So I just was losing my mind the other day and decided, and I think it was with Anthony, when I decided to just make a boat because I just wanted to do something for fun. And I have to remember that that's important to do because I never do that. And I was so upset and crying, and I just, something was like, just make a 3D boat. And I did. And then it triggered, I just now want to do a tin of sardines. And then it triggered something else. And so now there's a story in the works and there's things happening, and I'm excited. And it's the first time I'm going to bed excited to get up and start working again. I can feel it's coming back. And it just took.
Well, now you just opened a whole can of sardines that I want to know about this process. I mean, what an interesting, because I don't think people think that pros go through what you just described.
Oh yeah, well, and I did a talk, or not a talk, it was like a career day situation at Skidmore College last Friday. And basically a bunch of students would come up to your table and ask you about your career, especially those that were interested in doing it. And this one student came up to me and she just goes, "How do you deal with creative burnout and block?" And I just looked at her and I could see the eyes were all watery. And I just responded, like, I'm literally going through it right now. And I think it's important for you to know that it sucks when you're going through it. And it does feel like you're never going to come out of it. And you get to a point where you question, do I even want to do this as a career? Do I just want to completely throw in the towel and do something else? And you start to get hyper focused on the time that's going by, and you see other people continuing to work and you're thinking, oh, and it's really hard. And I was spiraling, and it was just that moment of building that 3D boat, because I had thought I needed a break from 3D for a bit, and I had this plan that I wanted to try that graphic novel, and I took Jake's class and it was really great. And I think what was happening was I just learned how much 3D is somehow has to be part of my process. And by building that
Mhm.
boat, it just reminded me of what brings me moments of joy. Like, I love the tactileness of slapping paint on an object. I love drawing, but there's something with building that's necessary for me. And it just, like, things started waking up. And it had been dormant for so long. And I think it's just so key to know that a moment of play can be really
Right.
important to.
Unstructured,
And I'm a structured person. I'm
uncommissioned.
not good with unstructured time. I'm not, like, so it is.
So looking back on it now, I'm glad you pulled yourself out of that moment. What do you think led to that moment? Not enough play, or was it being overworked, or what was it?
I think it was just probably burnout and from the last project, and just needing to really give myself some time. Um, I don't know. I don't know. Or it could simply be that it was just that phase that was going to happen at some point, because it's happened before a couple times. And I think maybe that's just also the cycle of being a creative, is that these moments may come where you're not, they just might come regardless. I don't know. I wish I could tell you.
Will, do you ever have, do you get that, Will?
I do. I get burnout, and but the thing that usually works in my favor, I think, is that because I go through these projects that I'm self-publishing, there's like the season of creating, and then there's the season of marketing, and then there's the season of fulfillment, and then there's um, the season of selling, and then there's like creating the next project. So I get these natural breaks now, and I find that that's what I need.
Yeah.
This is an interesting. We should have an entire pod. We should get all four of us on
Yeah.
here with Jake on here too, because this is super fascinating.
Well, even with
I
your
don't have that
podcast,
problem.
I mean, I have to say, even with your podcast, like for me, I definitely know I'm going through a growth period of change, and I'm learning that I love this. This is something that I've never done before, and I just really enjoy talking shop in a way that I feel like I'm hopefully giving some insights to people that are going into the industry. And then when I did the college visit, there's that age group. I'm really tapping into that and loving that. The creative part of the work aside, I'll admit the last podcast, when I left it, I just broke down because I thought they're going to find me out. They're going to discover that I'm in this block and I can't figure it out. And it had gotten to a point where even my husband's like, you've been through this before. It really hasn't been much time. It's been 4 months. Something always, you don't know what it's going to be, but try to just continue to take care of yourself, be present, just be aware of everything and just have some fun. Just don't worry so much about the outcomes, and focus more on just doing something that just makes you happy. Like just have a moment if you really, really are stuck. And that's when there was some little voice in my head that just kept saying, just build a boat. You want to build a boat, and for no reason at all. And I'm sitting here, and it was a moment in the studio where I was like, I'm done. I don't know. It's like, I'm done. And then there's this little person was like, just build that boat, build it. And then
That's really good because I think you're articulating really well that how heavy that can feel.
It can feel
at the
so
time.
heavy. And when I was talking to that student, and I just said, look, I know when it's happening, it doesn't feel like it's going to come out the other side. And I said, I know that mine will. I could see little nuggets of little jewels saying that it's going to happen. But when you're out of it, you look back and you go, it really hasn't been that much time. But when you're in it, you don't see an end to it. And it can be really tough, especially when your colleagues in your eyes are producing like crazy and just cranking, and you're going, I feel like I'm like going further and further back. But
I think that's one of the things that social media has done is it seems like no one is struggling.
and
that everybody's
that
just
is
killing it.
Yep.
yeah, I can't imagine mentally if I had that part of I would probably have made the burnout process even more difficult to get through. But
it's tough to see all that stuff happening. I have this is going to sound like a humble brag, but I've got the opposite problem of what you guys are talking about. And it really is a problem. It's almost like saying, but it feels like a humble brag because it's like saying, oh, I don't go to the gym because I'm too strong. Like that's my problem. My problem is I can't stop making stuff. And so it causes me to be manic a little bit. Like if you ever see the movie Ice Age with that little squirrel, Scrat, I think his name is.
That's you.
That's me. And I'm bouncing off the wall. I can't finish. I'm painting on one thing and I'm already wanting to paint the next thing and it never stops. And it sounds like a humble brag. Like, it's a huge problem.
That's when I'm in the mode of that, I'm that way. Like when I'm doing well, like, so even now with this, it's for me, I'm always the queen of 60% done with when I'm 60% done with the project, my mind is like wants to start the next one. But even with this, I'm already starting to think of other things I want to do and other things, and I just want to. But it's almost like it's all or nothing. I'm like,
right.
That's.
My mind never shuts off though, and I kind of wish I could. I wish I had the control to do that because it never stops. I have probably 100 paintings sketched up that I really want to paint.
Yeah. Wow. So you don't go through periods where you're just stuck and
no, it's the opposite problem is that it's just coming like a fire. It feels like a fire hose.
Yeah.
And it is a problem. I mean, I know some people would be like, oh, I'd like to have that problem. But it's not, it's too much. I would like to be able to calm it down a little bit. It's not my personality. I'm actually starting to meditate and trying to mitigate that constant flow of stuff. But when you can't turn it off, it's problematic.
Yeah. Too much of a good, I could see that. I could see that being stressful.
Yeah.
Hey
We should
guys,
do it.
I got a guy coming over to look at the golf cart
Oh,
right now. So
all right.
actually have three people scheduled to come and look
Hey,
at it.
show them
So
how to do the burnout, and that'll sell
Yeah.
it right from the get-go.
they're gonna look at that tire and they're gonna be like, "Been doing burnouts, huh?"
Yeah,
How old
just
are you?
one of them is bald.
They're gonna go, "How old are you?"
Yeah.
Yeah, just one of them's bald. The one and Lily's been giving me crap. She's like, "You're gonna wear out that tire," and now it's worn out. She's like, she just looks at me like, "How
See?
old are you?"
You should go draw the tread on there with a Sharpie.
I just think it's funny in this retirement community to see the look on people's faces when I do stupid things, because
love to see that.
they've all graduated and they're all super careful, and I'm not. I'm not. I don't want to be boring. It's a late life crisis.
I don't think you're going to have that problem.
I'm constantly 9. I will always be 9 years old.
I took the golf cart down. I've done some crazy things. Like I wanted to test it because we live on the golf course too, right? And there's hills that are insanely steep, right? And I just want to know what it's capable of. So I've gone up and down things you should probably never go up and down, and gotten in a position where I went up this hill and there's a safety mechanism, right? When you go up something too steep, I guess,
Oh,
where it shut off, but then it wouldn't go in reverse. So it was stuck, like up, pointed up in the air. And I'm like, this is going to be really embarrassing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because it's like on a part of the course that you don't go on.
right.
It's like off to the side and like, oh, you were screwing around. That's all I could hear, you know, like, so I'm like panicking, trying to figure out how to get it off the hill. And then I took the key out and did this reset thing, and then it went into gear. But for a moment there, I was like crazy panic that I was going to have to call someone to help me get this golf.
Oh, that's so good. I would love to hear that
Yeah.
story.
All right. Well, it's a good clue. Well, good luck with the cart. And
Thank you.
Yep.
We've
Good luck.
decided
Fun
to
talking
go
to you
Yeah.
guys.
without the cart. Yeah. All right.
all right.
Talk to you guys soon.
All right. See you
All right.
later.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.